Hi everyone, McBeard here, back with another deck guide for you. If there's two things you know about me if you watch my videos, one, I like making old school decks work in a new patch, and two, I like Ciri Dash. There's also a third thing you might know about me. I don't play a lot of Niflgaard, which makes me very excited to share this video with you. This is Remember John Calveit, an old school take on new school John Calveit spies with Ciri Dash. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let's check out the deck. All right, folks, old school John Calveit. So this may look kind of familiar with you, but I got some new twists to make this John Calveit deck work very well, very similar to how an old style of a very slim, hyper thin spy deck from John Calveit might work with Ciri Dash. So a couple things about this. This was based off of an original idea where you want the Niflgaard Brigade to kill the emissaries constantly so you can use your Vicos on it and thin your deck very, very, very efficiently. So this deck draws down to its last card pretty regularly, especially if you can get a good cycle on the emissaries and the Vicovara medics. So that style of play, along with the Emperor Brigade, which of course, as you know, if you play Niflgaard, is very important to a spy-based deck as it continues to grow. The big change, I guess, from kind of an old school mindset to the new school is the fact that the Emperor Enforcers are in this deck. Previously, when this deck was more of a meta deck, you would probably see Rot Tossers in this spot. Emperor Enforcers weren't a card that exists in this state, so you didn't run it. It was a different card. And Rot Tossers were pretty good. Provides a disloyal unit on the opposing side of the board for your Emperor Brigades to grow. Also, the Rotting Cow Carcass does help control your opponent's board in some way. I find that the card feels a little left behind in the new meta, and the Emperor Enforcers are hard to ignore. They are one of the best bronzes. They are extremely powerful cards, and the only thing that this card brings to this deck that should be of note is that your sequencing on your pings needs to be right, or else you'll kill spies and it'll prevent future pings. Sometimes it doesn't always make sense, especially if you kill a spy that you feel is behind in the order of when the ping should trigger. It'll still cancel it out somehow. They are retroactive to the spies that come on the board. So if you drop 3 spies and then if you drop 3 emissaries and then pull it, it'll ping 3 times. A lot of nuances about this card. It seems like kind of a rule breaker card. So just you need to play with it a lot as well. But it's a very powerful card and worth a spot in here. But I would say that this is probably flex if you wanted to go the old school route. Maybe try Rot Tossers again. I felt like they didn't work, but that was just in my limited testing. And then beyond that, of course, for the bronze, you have your emissary, which is constantly pulling bronze units out of your deck. Sometimes you can emissary into double Vico. It can actually happen. You can try to limit that as much as you possibly can. Sometimes it does happen. So be careful about that. It can happen. John Calveit and Kay here, of course, pull an additional unit out of your deck. They get better and better as the game goes on. You thin out your bronzes, then you're only pulling silvers and golds. And now, of course, the silvers here, this is a big part of it as well. You'll know that Ciri Dash has been a very popular Niflgaard card in the past, sees play here and there currently, but she used to be a staple. Putting Roach back in the deck was really good. Putting Roach back in the deck and playing Kay here into a very strong play was how this deck used to win in an overpowered John Calveit meta. It's even better now. This is even better now. And Ciri Dash isn't just a gimmick in this deck. She's really important to making this whole closing combo work. And what you do know about Niflgaard right now, if you're playing on the ladder, is that if you're running a deck with Emperor Brigades and Emperor Enforcers and Niflgaard Brigades and Emissaries, you will probably have a pretty easy time controlling round 1 without spending any gold cards at all. You don't have to spend gold cards. Bronze cards command round 1, help you in round 2, and your golds can really finish things off. And because you thin the deck so much, you're likely to draw them. Vesemir is a very important card, and you really, really want him in your opening hand. If you play Vesemir to start, you will be able to play Mandrake, which is Vesemir's only pull. So you do need to make this happen. Sometimes it won't, but you should always be able to buff Roach. So you play Mandrake, you make Roach a 10 strength silver, and that's where Asir Varanahid comes into play here. You play Asir, you put the 10 strength Roach back into the deck, and now your finisher is even more potent. Lastly, you do have Iris as well if you just need an extra huge push in points. With 3 Niflgaard Brigades being able to kill the spies on your opponent's side of the board, you really shouldn't have much of an issue killing Iris. If it's not the Niflgaard Brigade, it's going to be an Enforcer. There is no Menno in this deck. There's also no Cantarella in this deck, and you might think that that's absolutely insane. believe me, this is all for the greater good of making this final combo work. And Iris is part of it. If you can get her set up in round 3, I'll detail the whole thing. And of course, I have gameplay to show you how it works. Joachim de Vet is also very important for the end of the game, being that he will be killed by a Nausicaa Brigade. And your Nausicaa Brigade is the other card that you're putting into your deck with a Seer. So it's Roach and Nausicaa. And your Nausicaa that you're putting back is likely at 9 points. So when this card gets pulled by Joachim or pulled out by Kay here, it starts at 9. Joachim makes it a 19-point card. So there's a lot of different ways you can close the game, but it will center around Roach, a gold card, and Nausicaa Brigade, potentially hitting Iris, but also just hitting Joachim. So that's kind of how it's going to close out. K-Lock is just an extra emissary if you need it to thin more. If you don't need it, the Assassin and the Ambassador are also very useful in their own ways. Ambassador can save an Enforcer that's going to die. The Assassin can kill a high-priority target or perhaps a spy on their side. And now your golds. And this is where I think the deck really embraces the synergy of a super thin deck. You have Ciri Dash, and you want to play it as soon as you can because you want it to be in your deck as much as possible, but you also want it to grow. The stronger it is, the better, obviously. Vilgefortz is a very strong play. You can use it on a Vikavara medic, no problem. And you'll just continue to thin your deck, and it's usually a pretty big play. Anything that it pulls out is something you can use. Outside of an early Asir Varanahi, that's the only thing that you wouldn't really want to see. But usually you're playing Vilgefortz later. Asir has already been drawn and played because you've already thinned your deck out, and you know that Vilgefortz is going to be making a pretty big play for you. Vesemir is for Mandrake on Roach. Since this deck is so thin, you are likely to draw Vesemir much higher. You're much more likely to draw all of your deck and all of your good cards in a deck like this. So having a deck that centers around Vesemir playing Mandrake into Roach, which is a great opening play, you will probably get to do this at some point, as long as Roach is on the board. Otherwise, you apply the Mandrake to the Nausicaa Brigade that you're putting back in. Whatever it is, you're putting that card back in with a Seer, whatever you happen to Mandrake. If for some reason Roach and Vesemir don't line up, you still have a chance, right? Kay here, just another way to play John Calveit's leader ability, looking at the top 3 cards, any kind, gold, silver, bronze, playing whatever one it is. The later you play it, the better your picks are. Or you can get the stuff you need when you need it, because Calveit and Kay here together are great for thinning. So this deck is super thin, but I want to talk about this final play that you ideally want to construct, because you can fight for round 1 and control round 2, or pass in a favorable position in one of those rounds and get to round 3. You will be able to play a Seer to put a 10-point Roach into the deck, and of course the Nausicaa Brigade. Now you have Kay here in your hand, which is great to save. He's one of the best cards to save. And Ciri Dash also in the deck. You're playing Kay here, you're getting a 10-point Roach, and then you're playing a giant Ciri Dash. Or Ciri Dash is somewhere else or doing something else, or is just maybe not the best play. The best play could be Kay here into the 9-point Nausicaa Brigade to kill Joachim de Vet or Iris, or just kill something, depending on how long the round has gone and what's on the board. Or finally, Kay here into Joachim, which pulls the 19 strength Nausicaa Brigade, which then kills Joachim. That's really the best one. Well, Iris is the best one, but that's also really good. Lots of supremely strong ways you can close down. That part about John Calveit never changed. So I have some great gameplay to show you, the details and kind of how you would go ahead and play a round of this this deck. Hope you enjoy it. Hope you enjoy Gwent Open if you haven't watched it yet, and I'll see you later. All right, guys, a little Radovid matchup here with Remember Calveit, John Calveit's super slim spy deck. Just a quick preface, I do make a couple of misplays in this video, but I think that as far as showcasing how this deck works, it should do a fine job there. I'm only going to away the Nausicaa Brigade. Generally, I want those to be pulled out from the spies, so I'll take that away, and I don't carry a lot of 2-ofs generally, so dropping a Brigade, which is also great to source from the spies, and of course Roach, is the best thing you want to do for mulligan. So just think about the Brigades, and the Nausicaa Brigade and the Emperor Brigades being fine mulligans. Enforcers in hand are also great, but the lead-off play with Vesemir is really what you want to do. You're able to apply the Mandrake right away on Roach. It's a nice 16-point play to get things started. Thins your deck on top of that. 2 cards already out of the deck, and we just got started. That 10-point Roach will be really important, as Radovid sources his second Blue Stripe Scout.
Elves must die!
So I set up my Enforcer here because I can afford to play the 6-point card, and of course that ping prevents that unit from growing when another Blue Stripe Scout hits. Radovid has an answer. But does he have an answer for both of them? Again, just making sure that there aren't as many 5s on the board now. And there's the muzzle. So now I've been denied twice on a crucial setup card. Niflgaard will prevail. What's the best way to do this, though? I think because we have a disloyal unit already on the board, we'll go ahead and play the brigade. The Emperor Brigade, that is. As an Aretuza comes down, 10 strength plus weather. Pretty hard to deal with, but we're going to keep pushing. This is a great option here. I was looking for the Nausicaa Brigade because I did want to axe the Enforcer with the Brigade and consider rezzing it with my own Vikovara Medic to get my Enforcer back. Niflgaard will find a way. In this muzzle meta out there as Collar comes down, flipping the coin around in my opponent's favor, and I am not running Cantarella, so that's just one thing that's going to go wrong for me. Vikovara Medic's going to come out for the Emperor Enforcer.
Highly curious case.
Going to get one ping off right there. $20 points too rich for my opponent's blood. He's going to go ahead and pass. We were able to control it with a pretty low commitment of cards. A lot of quality cards still in the deck. The deck size is a little larger than I would like it to be, but the magic number is really 4 cards left going into round 3. That's where you want to be, especially if you're holding K here and John Calveit. Ciri Dash is something I want to play. I want that to go back into the deck, so it could be a draw later. So I'm aiming to play that this round, and I'm aiming to bleed my opponent out because my final plays are pretty devastating if they go my way. So I get right to thinning. Emissary into Vico into Emissary. And then I play Vikovara Medic again instead of playing an Enforcer, but there's nothing to Vikovara Medic. So this obviously looks bad. This isn't what I intended to do, but it still thinned a card out of my deck that I probably wasn't going to have much value drawing later on anyway. Since my bronzes were now going down, we only have 7 cards left in the deck. No emissaries remain in my opponent's graveyard. Vico isn't something I want to see later from Kalok's Emissary, whereas an Enforcer can see play just fine later on, knowing that we can at least source one from Calok. We still have John Calveit, and we still have K here. So it was a misplay, but it was easy to recover from, and I don't think that it really would decide the outcome of this game in this situation. As I drop the Emperor Brigade for 14 points, and now a Frost with no Aretuza comes out. This gives me hope that there's going to be a dead Aretuza later on, and that may just help me clinch the victory in round 3. Ciri Dash is going to come out. Radovid is available, so there is just a strong possibility with 2 very great lockable targets that Ciri Dash just wasn't going to make it here. So Ciri Dash is shut down in this round. Not much I can do about it, but I still have a lot of huge ways to play. Asir and Iris are still in the deck, as well as Joachim de Vet. Here comes my Vilgefort's pull, and it is Joachim. So a little earlier than I wanted. I like closing with Joachim, but the pull of the Nausicaa Brigade is devastating. I take a huge lead here. My opponent has to keep playing. Down 2 cards, but I think that the bleed is on at this point because there's just a lot of power coming out of this deck.
Temeria has yet to speak its last.
Commander's Horn gets him right back into this. He goes up 10 points. I have a decision to pass or play, but I want to see one more card from my opponent, given that I have John Calveit and K here in my hand. It's really great. Also, the target for the Nausicaa Brigade isn't bad. He just buffed the emissaries. So I'm going to go ahead and take this, jump ahead just a little bit of points. John Calveit and K here means I'm going to see the rest of my deck play exactly what I want with only 4 cards left in my deck. Now, I am guaranteed to find Asir with Calveit or K here, but ideally I would like to draw her. Not a huge difference either way. I draw into Iris, and I would rather have that be played later, and we get Asir on the mulligan, so now our work can begin. And there's the dead Aretuza I was counting on. This affords me a little bit of space. Although, it would be a short round, the weather would have been so devastating, but this affords me a lot of space. Asir Varenheat comes down, we're tucking the 10-point Roach and the 9-point Nausicaa Brigade back into the deck. And there's Villain Trettenmirth. Villain Trettenmirth threatens us supremely. The remainder of our game is making huge units and buffing them up with Iris. Knowing that we can reliably source Iris and another card that can help us kill Iris plus trigger Roach, I was hopeful until I saw Villain Trettenmirth. So how do we do this the best? It's tricky because Roach and Asir are both 10 strengths. But we want to play Iris now.
We've met.
because the Nausicaa Brigade that Cahir will pull will be greater than 10 strength. So can we win even if we lose our largest unit? Murktebrak is coming down. Murktebrak in this deck genuinely would prefer to cut down on units. He's not even pinging a Seer just out of risk here. We have two 10-point cards on the board, but the Nausicaa Brigade is going to come out from Cahir. It was a guaranteed pull right there. Hitting Iris, huge swing in points here. The 215 look great, but the 18 will protect it. And with the last card, even though a strong play of the Temerians kind of almost makes up for the dead Aretuza, with the Tickaville and Tretmirth, we lose 18 points, but it's still enough to stay in it. The dead Aretuza tells the tale, but that will be it for this gameplay video. You can really see how the deck can come together and close games. I highly recommend you try it out.